Hi everybody, John back again. This is my follow-up to, well, my last video that I made about Scandi Prog, Skogs Prog, and ones that I've collected over this past year. This section is going to be about similar music, but from Norway. Last lot was from Sweden, and it's sort of, its beginnings. Right from the early 90s. So in this one I'm going to talk a little bit about stuff that was going on in Norway around about the same time, although slightly later, I guess. So Willow is a band from Norway, and they are often seen as sort of a corresponding, if you like, band that was, part of that new wave of progressive rock that was coming out of Sweden in the early 90s. Now, the first album by Willow was released in '95, and I don't have that. In fact, I don't have very much music by Willow. I've often been curious. I think the first 3 or 4 albums are supposed to be, where it's at in regards to how they fit in with Ängelgård, Anekdot, and Landberg from Sweden. And then as they went a bit further along, I understand they almost become slightly metal. So slightly different by that point. But, so like I said, I've got their second album, which is here. I don't know how well it will show on here. So this is one that I got this year because I really wanted to, get to know White Willow a little bit, and learn to like their music if I could. Their music is fronted by female vocalists, and from what I understand, they've had a few different, lineup changes, but their vocals are predominantly female, and this music is actually very attractive, very, very nice. If their other music is anywhere nearly as good as this, I'm quite looking forward to getting to know them much better. I read just recently that just this year, White Willow have struck a deal with Charisma label to reissue their back catalogue. I think most of their albums released on CD when they came out, and there was a set of reissues made, I don't know when, on vinyl, but they had sort of alternative covers. I don't really know what that was about. Maybe it was just because they weren't sort of, proper reissues, I don't know. But they're all very, very hard to get hold of and very expensive. So I'm quite happy to hear that there's going to be a reissue of their original work, all using the original cover artwork. But I'm not really sure if they're going to be releasing on vinyl. I should imagine they would be, because I can imagine that there's probably quite a high demand at the moment. Anyway, so that's White Willow. Now last year, yeah, I got this, and this was a big inspiration to me. It's the Wobbler album. This was probably the best album from last year. And you know how it is when you get a record that you really like, sometimes you want to kind of, you know, you want a little bit more of it if you can. And maybe that's really what was pushing me towards this whole Mellotron feeling. I'm not really sure. Another band from Norway that were that were also quite of interest to me last year was Yieldshare, and they released this album this year, Pastoralia. Beautiful cover, and personally I think it's probably one of their better albums because it seems to be the most consistent. You know, I've always felt the albums they've released before, although I hadn't heard all of them, but the ones that they have released before, they've had high points and they've had low points, whereas I feel that this is, you know, pretty consistent all the way through, bringing him up a step, I think. Although surprisingly, if you look at where this falls on the progarchives.com list of albums this year, it doesn't rate very highly. I'm actually quite surprised by that, because it's I think, you know, for their brand, it's delivers everything that one could want really from them, but for whatever reason it hasn't become very popular. But I recommend this if you haven't heard it. Members from Yieldshare and other bands sometimes get together, and this is an album by Airbag, and yeah, it's a little bit different, a little bit difficult to describe, because the guy from Yieldshare that often plays in other people's bands or does little side projects, he often uses a pseudonym, and he seems to have different pseudonyms, but I do know that this is some connection to Yieldshare. This is really nice, acoustic, laid back Skogs Prog, you know, with a capital S. Beautiful it is. And Richard, Vinylising Progress, showed this on CD, and I thought, oh, I've got to get that. It would have been great to have got it on vinyl, but it was just unattainable. So I couldn't wait any longer. I waited quite some time, and I just pulled the trigger and got the CD. In one of his recent videos, he showed that he actually got the album, the vinyl copy of this, which I'd love to have too, but oh well, we'll see. I quite enjoyed listening to this. My wife and I went away for our wedding anniversary for a drive in Wales up to Hay on Wye, and this was our soundtrack in the car for that trip. So it'll always remind me of that. Beautiful. I'm going to do a little needle drop of this. Now, this is another Norwegian Skogs Prog band. I'm not sure how to pronounce their name. Tempted to say Woodwassie, but it might just be Woodwas. And this is an album called Northern Gothic. Beautiful cover. But just like the last one, Eldsmark, that I showed, this is very much a project that involves help from musicians from Yieldshare, and in many ways this is this works almost as a sort of a complementary album to this. I mean, they're different bands, but the music isn't a million miles away. Again, this is very acoustic-y, very woodsy. I mean, they've both got small amounts of mellotron on them. It's not dominant, but it's there occasionally. Again, I'm going to do a needle drop of this because this is just beautiful. I've been listening to this a lot this year. So next I'm going to show this Collignaut record. When I first saw this, I thought to myself, I don't know if it's really my thing. I gave it a little listen, and it didn't grab me. But again, I was inspired by Richard, Vinylising Progger, who showed this and said gave it a lot of praise. So I gave it another go, and I'm really glad that I did. It's a beautiful record. Yeah, I don't know if it's what you'd describe as Skogs Prog, but definitely Scandi Prog, Norway. So it's basically the first solo album by a musician from another Norwegian band called Airbag. And Airbag, I think I'm right in saying that they started off life as being a Pink Floyd, what do they call them? Pink Floyd tribute band. And their music as Airbag, although they're not covering Floyd, their music is obviously very inspired by Pink Floyd. I haven't heard much of it, but the music by them that I have heard, I would say that it's it's got a very close eye on much of the work done by Dave Gilmour, and I think they've also managed to sort of weave that into the very sort of modern sounding Steven Wilson type Porcupine Tree type stuff. So that's Airbag. Doesn't necessarily appeal to me very much, but this does. And I do wonder if when he's done this, whether it was just sort of a deliberate want to try and make something that was, slightly more retro sounding, very 70s sounding. Again, that's closer to what a lot of these Skogs Prog bands have been doing recently. So I'll give you a little listen to this as well.
I want to know how it feels, released from existence.
Band from Norway, not a Skogs Prog band, I would say, but definitely very sort of retro Scandi prog. This is The Accord. It's a funny name. I don't know why they're called The Accord, but they are. This is their third album, The Accord 3. Very striking cover. I like this. Another Norwegian band. They play a very sort of retro sounding music. You can hear elements of, in this album anyway, you can hear elements of Jethro Tull, and ELP is definitely in there. I think they're probably more Hammond orientated than Mellotron. It doesn't say, but it just says organ. Frederick Horn. Great stuff. I've really enjoyed this. Some tracks are stronger than others, but it's all good. Like I said, it's their third album. Their other music hasn't been released on vinyl, but I felt so inspired, I bought their second album. Now this is, whereas this is sort of retro classic rock with strokes of prog in it, this is really quite severe prog. It's their second album called Helik. Helik. I don't know how you pronounce that in Norwegian. Helik. But it's got 2 tracks on it. First is part 1 and then part 2 on side 2. First track is 20 minutes 44 and the second track is 23 minutes 30. And they're quite eclectic. I think the first track is for me the favourite one, but they're both good. I don't know if I should do a needle drop of this or not, because there are moments on this where it is really sort of crazy stuff going on. next I'm going to talk about this Ring von Möbius band, another Norwegian retro prog band. They seem to have a real sort of ego of their own. This is their second album. We'd like to get their I would like to get their first album, but you don't see it very well priced at the moment. Maybe that will change. They are it's a nice coloured vinyl, this one. It's sort of a golden colour, isn't it? Yeah, again, they've got their feet firmly in the classic rock side of prog. Definitely very retro. I mean, these could come right out of the 70s, and I understand that they actually poster here actually tread very closely to the sound of Van de Graaff Generator, who I don't know much about, so I can't really comment on that. But also I hear lots of Hammond in this, which I think is a sort of a typical ELP sounding thing as well. I can't really tell you more than that. I've just been listening to it and digging it, and I'm not the world's biggest fan of ELP, and I do struggle a little bit with Jethro Tull too. And listening to records like this has made me sort of dig them out a bit and give them a second chance, because these, although they're very retro sounding, they do clean up that sound and they kind of give it a bit of a kick up the backside, So it has encouraged me to step back and listen to some of these other bands that I perhaps haven't given as much attention as I could have done. Now lastly, I'm going to talk about a band called Arabs in Aspic. This is the first album by them, and it's one that I got sort of just recently, and it's a little different from sort of the sound now. This is much more entrenched in the sound of Black Sabbath, basically. Not to mean really that they're a hard rock band, a sort of space rock band, I suppose you'd say in this context, but they do have that very sort of slightly doom sound. My dog's hitting my tripod with a tail. Saffron, settle down. But also it is much heavier, much more reliant on that sort of heavy guitar sound. Pleasant to listen to, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite you know, what I've come to know as being their sound. This is the first album by them that I got, and this blew me away. I thought, wow, this is so good. In fact, in terms of quality and everything, I would say that this is up there with music by Augusta, the Swedish band that I spoke about in my last video. This has much more vocals on it. I think Augusta are instrumental, really, but this is quite close in terms of sound, but also quality of the music and everything. And yeah, they do a really good job. I heartily recommend this. Definitely going to do a needle drop of this. They have such crazy record albums.
Er du virkelig sterk, kan du motstå meg? Er du virkelig sterk, kan du motstå meg?
This is the last album by them that I'm going to show today. It's actually the most recent one, and I've been sort of saving this. Arrived sometime last month, and I played it the first time, and it was just, I could tell this is going to be a record that I really, really get into. So it's called Madness and Magic. I believe it was released, maybe last year. Yeah, very much. I would really put this up there as being Scandi, Skogs Prog, and yeah, again, amazing cover artwork. I don't know if I'm going to do a needle drop of this, but I will, at least of some of their music. There's a few of their albums out still, and I really do want to pick those up when I can. And surprisingly, they've even got a few live albums. I think almost as many live albums as they do studio albums, which yeah, I don't know if I'm interested in those or not, but hey, they're there and people buy them, so they must be good. Okay, so I think I showed enough records now for this particular video. Probably going to turn out to be quite a long video. The next one that I make in this series will focus on Finland, and also one or two that I've picked up from Denmark and Iceland, being Nordic countries, and I'll also include one or two others that I've got from the other Nordic countries since I've been making the videos. But anyway, I hope that was enjoyable. Don't have an awful lot of things to tell you about these other than how great they are and how much I've really enjoyed them. I really suck up that mellotron that runs through a lot of these, and even some of the other keyboard work. And yeah, it's fantastic year so far in terms of buying records for me. Really enjoyed this. Okay everybody, thanks very much. Check out my next video. Call out to all my subscribers and everybody else that might watch this. I hope you're all doing well. Okay, see you next time. Bye.